Let's elevate your outdoor grilling and barbecuing for the next time you're at the campground. Welcome to RV Out West. I'm your host, Brooks. My family of four's base camp is located in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and our RV adventures radiate out from there. Please grab a mug of coffee and join us as we discuss RVing around the American West. From sweet camping spots, gear and equipment, to tips and tricks, we've got you covered. We are RV Out West. Picture this, a man with a big full beard and a great big belly laugh that's just infectious, whose charisma just makes him larger than life. This really does a pretty good job of describing Forrest. I've known Forrest ever since I lived in Ojai, California in the early aughts. He took me under his wing and taught me the finer points of all-grain brewing. But naturally, our friendship was forged over beers and food. You see, we both really love to cook. Over the course of the last 2 decades, though, Forrest has taken his passion for cooking, and he's done a deep dive into the professional world as a pitmaster. I was having a chat with Forrest recently, and was regaling him with our tales of our RV trips, where we bring a smoker to the campground, and twice this summer, the boys and I here do a huge barbecue smoke fest. So I wanted to bring Forrest on the show to pick his brain about how we could elevate our smoking and grilling game in the campground as well as at home. It's a real honor to have him on the show. Forrest, thank you so much for joining us here on RV Out West.
Well, we've cooked a lot together, so we've had a good time. You actually flew down with Texas Tom, who's now Alaska Tom, and we queued like nobody's business. So
we did. We did. But before we start, I'd like for you to share the story in your own words about how we met, and tell that story.
Oh my God. Yeah. So that would be the old brew pub, Ojai brew pub. And you were working there. We just immediately clicked. We talked about all sorts of things. And then you said, hey, let's go get a drink at the hub. And I said, okay. And then I think the next thing out of your mouth was that, oh, my wife and I have to go to the airport. And we're trying to figure out how we're going to get there. And I said, well, I'll drive you. No big deal. Not a problem whatsoever. And that's how we immediately became friends. Besides the fact that we like Jack Daniels.
We did. We did. And was that when you got the nickname that night at the hub, or was that later?
No, that was the night you gave me the nickname Foreskin.
And how did that come about? Because I believe you ribbed me.
Yeah, because you kept making Forrest Gump jokes. You just I'm like, dude, like with a name like Forrest Marsh, this is the best you can come up with is a Gump reference. And you looked at me, he's like, no, you're right, Foreskin. And I was like, oh, son of a whore.
Yep.
What did I start?
Yep. I just wanted to get that on the record for sure. So,
Foreskin, foreplay.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Live and learn. Don't challenge somebody with undiagnosed ADHD about, coming up with something.
Yeah, exactly.
On the fly. All right. In a more serious note, why don't you share with us a little bit about your bio, about kind of how you got into barbecuing and grilling, that kind of backstory and history there.
Well, the honest truth is my dad, he was a breakfast master. The French toast, the pancakes, everything that he could pull off was just incredible. The man just couldn't barbecue. For whatever reason, he just when he got to the grill, everything just got dried out and felt and tasted like hockey pucks. I forget how it actually happened, but there was one particular night that I ended up, my dad wasn't home in time. So my mom had me start grilling pork chops. And they turned out great. She loved them. The whole family loved them. And she basically said to my dad, he's taking over on the grill. It's like,
nice. And how old were you approximately at this time?
Oh, I think I was 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, baller. And you're not even from Texas.
No, not from Texas, but I've been to Texas, love Texas. I've learned a lot from Texas on how to grill and how to, do different things. But yeah, no, my first experience was just the fact that I had to do it and
And
turn,
the old man couldn't.
and I realized almost immediately I loved it. I loved the smells. I loved everything about it. Even though this was a gas grill, I just loved how pork chops smelled on a grill. It was just like, oh yeah, that's the stuff right there.
But let's talk about how you kind of got into more on the professional side of barbecuing.
Was funny thing is in Texas, I never actually cooked, which was a weird thing. But I mean, not professionally. I did a lot of things there, but I didn't get a chance to cook there. Came back to Ojai. A friend of mine who owns a barbecue restaurant catering company was like, "Hey, I need somebody that knows how to barbecue." And so I went to work for him, like just immediately knew how much I loved it. Like just like building a fire, getting ready, seasoning the meat, getting just everything ready to go on the grill. Just was like, this is the best job ever. Like I never thought I was working. That was the best part about it. So I just happened to be doing something that I love for a living. And it was so great. And I would cook sometimes 120 tri-tips in a day and 16 whole chickens and countless racks of ribs. And I would have to keep that grill going. I had to keep the burn box going. And like something that should have only taken 4 hours would sometimes take 8 hours. And the best part about that 8-hour day is at the end of the day, I loved every moment of it. Like it didn't feel like work. It never feels like work when I barbecue. It just feels like love.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you're mostly self-taught, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, never gone to a school or anything like that. I just figured it out. I just knew that from the get-go, this is how you get a fire going. This is how like I said, I've worked at a couple places in Texas where I learned more about fire management, but I learned how to barbecue because I decided I like barbecue. I like grilling. I love food, and I wasn't going to not have good food growing up.
What then? I mean, tell me, what is your favorite cut to smoke and why? What is it about that particular cut that just really gets you juiced?
To be honest with you, it's the funniest thing. It's tri-tip. I love tri-tip. It's the cut of the meat. It's where it's the kind of meat people don't even know about necessarily in a lot of places. And what I do love about tri-tip is that you can smoke it, you can grill it, you can do all sorts of things to it. You can turn it out like brisket, or you can turn it out like what they call the Santa Maria style, where it's got a little tough edges but tender in the center, and it's like eating the most tender meat you could possibly think of. It's like eating filet mignon that has been cooked perfectly. And that's why I like tri-tip, because you can have so much fun with it. I love brisket, don't get me wrong, but brisket, if you don't get it right, it can be the worst thing you ever did. Tri-tip is much more forgiving.
Yeah, okay. And I get that. And it's weird. Up here in Washington State, I can find, and specifically just for people who are listening, who might not be familiar with this particular cut, we're talking about the tri-tip roast. And I'll have you explain, Forrest, a little bit kind of what part of the cow that is. I can find tri-tip roasts sometimes, like at my local QFC grocery store, but a lot of times I do need to ask the butcher for them, because oftentimes what they'll do is they'll take the roast and then they slice the roast into steaks, and you'll often see them packaged as tri-tip steaks. What we're talking about here specifically is that tri-tip roast.
Well, and the tri-tip comes from the back quarter of a cow, and that's why it's so tender. It's the part that it sits inside. If it moves, it barely moves. You can do anything with it. You can cook it, like I said, as a steak, like you've said, or you can cook it as a roast. It's such an amazing piece of meat.
I want to take a pause right here to talk to you a little bit about our podcast listener survey. Our 2024 podcast survey is live. The survey will take about 5 to 10 minutes of your time, but you will be providing valuable feedback to me that's going to help guide the future of RV Out West. By completing the survey, you will be entered to win a gift valued at $80 combined from Camper Alerts, RV Overnights, as well as RV Out West. This thank you gift includes 5 premium alerts from our friends and sponsor over at Camper Alerts with a value of up to $25. Also included is a 1-year subscription to RV Overnights, which is an app that connects you with places you can stay overnight. Plus, I'm throwing in a $25 gift card to Amazon so you can find something fun to add to your camping kit. Plus, you can earn an extra entry by heading over to camperalerts.com and signing up for their alert services for free. You only get charged when you set an alert. Visit their website at www.camperalerts.com to learn more and sign up. Please visit rvoutwest.com and click the link survey, or you can head over to Instagram and find the link in our bio. Visit rvoutwest.com and take the survey today. I really would appreciate it. Thank you so much. So I want to get into, what do you think is the biggest mistake most recreational kind of barbecuer, backyard grillers make?
Honestly, the biggest mistake is the heat. And what I'm not talking about the spiciness of the meat, but the actual heat of the grill itself. You want to, of course, have, and this is why I love the chimneys, and I love grills that allow for chimneys to work. You want to build your coals over to one side, and you want to get that part hot so you can flame kiss whatever you're going to do. But then you got to move that meat, whether it be chicken, pork, steak, whatever. You got to move it off of that heat so it finishes up tender and delicious. Biggest mistake is that they just drop the coals right in the middle, and then you can't do anything with it. So
we received a Weber kettle as a wedding present, like the traditional, I think they're about $95 now or $115, but the black traditional Weber kettle.
Yep.
And once somebody showed me properly how to use that, hands down, that is basically, I think, the best grill on the planet.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah, there are so many things. I've cooked a turkey over, Thanksgiving on one of those things, because you can keep heat so well in those things.
And you can get convection going. I mean, it's just an amazing piece of simplistic engineering that just is awesome.
Yeah. Well, everybody talks about the egg. Everybody talks about all sorts of grills that you can spend thousands and thousands of dollars on. But honestly, the best thing you could ever own and learn how to cook on is a Weber grill, because the minute you get that right is the minute you stop being just a backdoor barbecue guy and becoming a griller.
My buddies up here that I go RV camping with, we at least twice a year now, we bring one of those propane smokers. We bring them to the campground. So both on Father's Day and on Labor Day weekend is when we traditionally do a big campground grill out. And so we're camping with 4 or 5 families. Everybody's bringing some sort of something meat-wise to contribute into the smoker. And we fill the campground with all this delicious aroma of smoke and barbecue. But what are some tips and tricks you might have on how we can make the best barbecue given those tools that we're using?
Honestly,
because we're using those wood chips. It's propane's great because we can control the fire or the temp.
Exactly.
But give me, what are some tips and tricks you might have?
Tips and tricks, real simple. Keep those wood chips in water. Make sure that they are as moist as they can be, so that when you throw them in there, they're actually providing smoke and not just heat. Because that's the biggest problem I think most people do, is that they think, the chips have been in the water long enough. Nope, they have not. Keep them in there, because the whole idea of that is for it to smoke, for it to not burn, but to actually just slowly create that heat that you're looking for.
Do you recommend that like the night before you plan to do it to go ahead and just, dump the bag of chips into like a little 3-gallon pail and add water and get them soaking overnight?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Depending on the size of the chip that the chunk that you're using, because with my smoker, I use a larger wood chunks and all that. So I usually soak them for at least 48 hours.
Oh, these are the small little chips, like the shredder.
So yeah, which is fine. Those shredded chips are great because they do provide flavor, but get them wet. Don't let them be dry.
Okay. You got another tip or trick? Anything?
Honestly, trust yourself.
What do you mean?
That in this regard is, if you know what you're doing, or if you don't know what you're doing, if you're looking to learn more, pay attention to what you are doing or what you're saying and things like that. But more importantly, when you get on that grill, when you start grilling, trust yourself. The worst thing you can do is doubt. And the minute you start doubting yourself on the grill is the minute that grill goes wrong. So trust yourself. Trust what you're doing is right. Might be not what I would do or you would do or somebody else would do, but for you, that's right. So own it, learn it, love it, and trust yourself.
Well, if I did that and my buddy Josh is listening, then I would have pulled a pork butt at 161.
Yeah,
And
but you know
he
what?
corrected me, and luckily, I was like, okay, you're right. And whatever. I mean, I was a few tequilas in too, so,
Yeah, but you got to trust yourself. You got to trust that.
I was pretty adamant. I was like, no, I'm pulling this thing at 161. And it's like, no, you're going to get us all sick.
Well, yeah, that's probably a good save.
Yeah.
But other than that, like if you want to throw, mustard on a pork roast, go for it. If you want to wrap it in bacon and not worry about anything, go for it. That's what I'm saying. Just that's the part about grilling, cooking, everything is having fun with it. I would not have the recipes. I would not be able to do what I do if I didn't have fun with it. And that's the bottom line. Have fun. Should never be something that is a chore.
That makes sense. Yeah, totally. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk about wood.
Well, let's talk about wood.
Let's talk about wood, baby. So I got 2 questions. It's a 2-parter. So what is your go-to wood you normally use just kind of off the bat? And then I want you to kind of share with us how you match kind of your wood profiles to the various different cuts, animal, etc. that you use. So kind of,
Sure.
I'm assuming wood is like matching a wine to it too. So there's going to be different profiles that the wood smoke gives off. So why don't you tell me about your go-to wood and then kind of how you match profiles to the cut?
Okay, so my go-to wood, if you can find it, is alder wood. Alder wood is just really easy smoking. If you don't know what you're going to be doing, and you just find yourself needing something, alder wood is always great because it's a good solid wood without providing too much smell or flavor to what you're trying to do. But if I'm doing ribs, oh man, if I can find some cherry oak, that is it brings out the sweetness of the ribs. If I'm doing beef, if I'm doing tri-tip, if I'm doing things like that, then I'm looking for a harder wood. I'm looking for a solid oak. I'm looking for something that it can provide and can back the flavor of the meat.
Do you ever use hickory?
Oh, I love hickory. I love hickory in a lot of different ways.
Tell me about that.
Hickory actually is one of those things. It's actually good for beef. Hickory and beef just get along like nobody's business. They complement each other. One is not too strong for the other. So you don't have a competing flavor that you use hickory on pork or fish. All you're going to do is taste the hickory. You're not going to taste the actual meat.
Just because that meat's a little bit more delicate, is that kind of what you're alluding to?
Yeah, it's a medium wood. It's good for some things. It's not great for others.
What about applewood? Because like when I do ribs or I do pork, I love using apple. I've never actually used cherry, but I just love applewood on pork.
Applewood and cherry wood are perfect for pork because that's what it brings out. It brings out the sweetness in those meats that you wouldn't necessarily taste. And if you throw down with some stronger wood like alder wood, hickory, or something like that, you're covering that flavor. You miss out completely on the sweetness of the meat and the sweetness of the wood that brings out in the meat.
Let's jump right into the big debate between like Memphis barbecue and Kansas City barbecue. I can't remember exactly where Texas falls into this. I'm going to specifically talk about ribs. Wet versus dry. To mop or not to mop? What is your take?
Okay. First of all, if you're gonna do ribs, you're gonna do them right. You gotta prep them right. You gotta make sure you pull off that membrane and all that good stuff. And I personally say you dry rub them, let them sit overnight, and then you throw them on the grill.
But do you mop them at the end for the last like 5-10 minutes? Or do you just say, hey, you know what? If you want the sauce is on the table.
My personal preference is no sauce. If ribs are done right, they don't need a sauce because they're fall off the bone deliciousness on their own. But I understand people are out there who like a little sauce, who like them a little wet. My particular thought process is mop at the very end. Yeah. Like last 10 minutes, you throw it on, gives it that nice color, that coat, that crust.
And then it caramelizes a little bit. And yeah. I don't typically mop my ribs. I'm hey, barbecue sauce is on the table. If you want it, you can dip it in it.
Yeah. Honestly, I'm the same way.
Moving on, I want to talk a little bit about, so if you're at a campground, most campgrounds, unless you're doing the full on like dispersed camping, but if you're in a state park campground or a county park campground or something along those lines, you'll always find a fire pit with one of those grill grates. What would you say make on that? What do you do with that?
First of all, make sure you've got a grill brush and clean the shit out of that because you don't know what's been on there beforehand. And then the same thing is like, get your coals going, all that good stuff, but bank them to the side. So you got heat in one place and you got less heat in the other. So you can get things that need to be done quicker in one place and things that need a little more time can be moved over to the side.
And so besides burgers and dogs, right? I mean, that's kind of Captain Obvious, but if you wanted to bring something for a nicer cut, what would you, are you talking tri-tips? Are you talking pork chops? Could you do ribs? I mean, what do you?
Ribs can be a tough thing to do just because unless you've cut the ribs down and not cooking as a full rack, like you cut them in half and could do things like that. But you can do steak. You can do thicker cuts of pork.
Tomahawks would be awesome.
Yeah. Tomahawk on that would be great.
Dope. Yeah. All right. Well, brother, I got to go. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us here on RV Out West. I really appreciate it.
Hey, I love the fact that you got this going on, and I'm always willing to talk.
Hey, thanks so much, Forrest. I'll talk to you later, bud.
All right.
If you like this episode, please share it with your friends and family. I'd also like to invite you to follow RV Out West on Instagram and Facebook, where you can join in on the conversation. Please do remember to head over to rvoutwest.com to participate in our podcast survey and be entered to win that $80 thank you gift. It would mean a lot to me. In next week's episode, we are joined with RV Jedi, who shares his RVing adventures on YouTube. He also does these great segments called Chefing It Up. So if you do like to cook in the campground and are looking for other ways to expand your menu, be sure to check out his YouTube channel. I'm excited to have him on the show, and we have a great conversation that you won't want to miss. So tune in next week. Thanks so much for listening to RV Out West. Join us again next week. Please like and subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you choose to get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. I sure would appreciate it if you left a rating or a review of the show. Special thanks to Scott Holmes Music for providing us the intro song, We Are One. RV Out West can be found on Instagram and Facebook, where you can interact with us and follow along on our RV adventures around the Pacific Northwest. So get out there, explore, and go see what's beyond the horizon.